White Lion Promotions podcast, episode 9 with Mario Knapp. Mario Knapp is going to be a candidate for the Sheriffs of Miami-Dade. The reason he's here is because he is a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. So welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So we definitely want to hear a little bit about your jiu-jitsu journey.
Okay.
Who you're under, what belt you are, what got started, how did you get started?
Right. So I am a brown belt, but I feel like a 4-stripe white belt right now because it's been so long, and all that. So I know what my mind wants to do in a fight, but maybe my body wouldn't do it as smoothly as it probably should. I started jiu-jitsu. I saw the UFC. We're talking back in '95. So I saw the UFC. I wanted to learn. Obviously, Hoist changed the world at the time. And I ended up calling Torrance, California, and they told me that the only certified Gracie Jiu-Jitsu instructor was a guy named Pedro Valente here in Miami. I ended up calling him. We touched base. He was teaching out of a small warehouse off of Bird Road. He was a brown belt at the time. And that's where I started. I was on and off because I was a real rookie at the time working midnight. So it was really hard for me to, navigate through working midnight shift and training. And it was just new to me.
What year was that?
This had to be in 96-ish.
Wow.
Yeah, around 96. So I did that, and then long story short, your career continues to kind of move forward and develop. And during that time, I rediscovered Pedro. By this time, he was a black belt, and I rediscovered him while I was in SRT. I was in SRT is SWAT, right, for Miami-Dade.
Right.
And a friend of mine started telling me about this young guy named Pedro who was teaching out of Sunny Isles. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's my Pedro, because I had lost him.
Yeah.
And so I rejoined there. I got my blue belt there. Years later, I got my purple belt.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started in Miami-Dade, we started a jiu-jitsu program.
Right. So I researched that you were one of the main people or the person who started the Hive, what is known as the Hive, which is a jiu-jitsu program in Miami-Dade County Police Department. Is that correct?
Yeah, but I won't take full credit.
Okay.
So I've always found jiu-jitsu to be really important. Ever since when I went to training as an officer, I rolled with every single student. Mm-hmm. I was a blue belt at the time, but it was a different world back then because not a lot of people knew what jiu-jitsu was. And so you could very easily be a blue belt and kind of manhandle humanity, right? Mm-hmm. And I did that, and we always found a way to introduce jiu-jitsu in there. But then we actually tried to do an affiliate program in Miami-Dade. It kind of didn't work. It kind of fell on its face for a little while. And then I needed a couple more jiu-jitsu representatives in the defensive tactics unit. So I brought in a guy named, I used to have Freddie Trillo there. Then I brought in a guy named Sean Gornowitz. And then I brought in a guy named David Garcia. And both were brown belts at the time. As a matter of fact, all three, when they came, were brown belts.
Wow, Freddie was a brown belt
Freddie
as well.
was a brown belt when I brought him to that unit, yeah. So, but remember, Freddie had left. Then this is time 2. Now, I was with Freddie. I brought Freddie over when I was a sergeant. Now I'm a lieutenant running training, and I bring over the next wave, which was Sean and David.
And then you were a purple belt.
I was a purple belt at the time. And I did with Sean what I do with everybody. Remember, the goal there is you're a teacher. Yeah. You are certifying people actually as instructors sometimes. And I used to do a lot of instructor development. And long story short, I brought Sean in one day. I heard he was really good. But, in jiu-jitsu, we're a little skeptical of each other. We always are. Yeah. Right? Until we roll. And I brought Sean in, and I said, let's go train. And we went to the room. He had his gi on, I had my gi on, and I said, okay, we're here, show me, teach me something. He's like, what do you mean? I said, you're an instructor now here, teach me, as if I don't know anything. He says, teach me what? I said, I don't care, anything. Just, I want to see you teach. Yeah. And so he, obviously, a really good, capable instructor, and then we started rolling a little bit. And at first, I can tell, he was kind of letting me do things. And then I said, no, let's really roll. I want to see it. And he was nice to me, but he manhandled me a little bit in a respectful way. I was his boss. Yeah. And but then I realized, okay, he's for real. This is good.
He's legit.
Yeah, he's legit. Yeah. And we do that in jiu-jitsu. It doesn't have to be rude.
And I've talked to Sean, and Sean has such a great background in martial arts. Mm-hmm. I've gone to the Hive. I've seen him teach. Literally sit in a corner just to see him teach.
Right.
He's done like, I want to say it's like Muay Thai. He's done striking. He's done it all. So he definitely knows his stuff.
Like David too. David has a lot in it.
Right. Well, David has competed for us.
Right.
Got in submission of the night. He's just so amazing.
Yeah.
David is like really, really good. I rolled with David. I haven't rolled with Sean, but I rolled with David, and David is like, he's legit.
Yeah,
too.
I like rolling with both of them. With both, I find David funner to roll with, only because I feel like I have more odds against David. You know, probably not today.
Yeah.
But
when was the last time you rolled?
I think the last time I rolled was we did a fundraiser. Pedro Valente did a little fundraiser for us, and it was Pedro Valente's school, Freddie Trillo's school. We were trying to put the jiu-jitsu community together.
I wish I would have known you then.
Yeah,
we would have gone.
Yeah, for the campaign, because as you know, this is going to be a big office, and we wanted to, for the community, the jiu-jitsu and martial arts community, and MMA community to know that they have a fighter in there. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, which is why you're here.
Right.
We definitely want our followers to know that you are a candidate who understands martial arts, who has been in it, who's a brown belt, who you've basically walked in our shoes, and to actually feel good that you know how important it is for officers to train.
Well, I think one of the things important that I think is important in that conversation is I was also the use of force subject matter expert for Dade County for 18 years.
Yes.
So I am outside of the jiu-jitsu community currently because I'm working on other things. But I am, we were pioneers in the Miami-Dade Police Department. There was one guy that introduced jiu-jitsu to Miami-Dade, and I was number 2. That incorporated. We had a guy named Mike Madruga. Mike Madruga was the first guy in the Miami-Dade Police Department that I know that actually was trying to teach officers how to fight in a modern way, not just what the state curriculum is, He was the first guy that I saw that I give credit to bringing MMA into.
Is he still active as a police officer?
No. He retired. He left, but he was the first one. And let's put it this way: he wasn't a high level guy.
Yeah.
He just came across as it because back then everybody was so low. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Jiu-jitsu isn't as big as it is today.
Right.
And it was the 90s,
and it wasn't as competitive as it is today.
Yeah. It's a little different ballpark now.
It is.
For sure. So like you said, you've been in SRT, you've been in K9 Bomb Squad, you've done special events, underwater recovery, you helped start the Hive.
Right. Yeah, but so I commanded those units.
You commanded them.
Yeah. So I was an SRT.
Okay.
I was an operator on SRT. I was an instructor there. I was the rappel master, the MP5 instructor, Now, I left there, went to defensive tactics because I knew I was getting promoted.
Okay.
And they offered me a position there because I wanted to get off the pager for a little bit. When you get promoted to sergeant, you're pretty much, the expectation is you're going to go to midnights or whatever. So I said, let me get off the pager for a little while. And they offered me a position in defensive tactics. What I'm trying to tell you is what you were reading. I was the major of Special Patrol, and under my command, I had 3 captains reporting to me, but I was in charge of the SWAT team, the bomb squad, the aviation unit. So that's all the helicopters, all the airplanes, the Marine Patrol unit, all the boats and jet skis, all the canines, the motors, the divers, the incident management team, which is why I was the operations commander for the Surfside building collapse. I was the RID commander as a lieutenant. I did that for 5 years. I was a narcotics sergeant. And I was pretty much brought back to training in every rank. I was in training as an officer. They brought me back as a sergeant. They brought me back as a lieutenant. They brought me back as a captain.
Do you think you're the most qualified, who's most experienced candidate right now?
Yeah, so I find it funny because the term qualified
it's being used a lot.
Is subjective.
Yeah.
Somebody can say I'm more qualified, and now we can argue about the qualifications, but nobody can argue experience.
So you are the most experienced.
Absolutely.
Candidate.
I think you can grab any combination of 3 candidates.
I've looked at a whole bunch, 15 candidates that there are, and I'm like, man, his resume is like, I'm like, what hasn't this guy done? Right. Like literally.
Yeah, it's funny because if you stack any 3 candidates of your choice, Any of them. Pick whoever you think is the top 3 and stack them together. They won't reach the level of experience. And I don't just mean operational experience, because that's super important. None of them can touch that. But I'm talking about the combination of administrative, command, policy writing, and operational experience. I don't think anyone comes near. In fact, I would put my resume, and I found this out. I almost became I was how can I say, not a runner-up, I came in second place. I was a finalist for the City of Wichita Police Department, where there were 19 other police chiefs that put in for it, and it ended up being me and another guy who blew me out of the water because he had 38 years of experience. Wow. But what I'm trying to tell you is there's no one I won't put my resume next to, because I feel like I accumulated a lot of experience through the years. It's not something I can replicate. I couldn't remake my career if I tried to. Yeah. It kind of just, I was in the wrong place at the right time all the time.
Yeah. So if you became sheriff, I was looking at your website, and you have on your website that you're ensuring the department to be adequate structured, staffed, and trained is a key component in providing our residents with the safest and most secure environment. Right. With that being said, there's been a $70 million budget cut.
Which nobody has talked about until I talked about it.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it.
So here's the thing. The truth is, we got to remember the dynamic here, you know, and we'll talk about it later, but the chronology of how people entered the race becomes important and becomes very telling on people's characters and their attributes. Yeah. Right? So that's one thing. But the other thing is to know how this sheriff's office thing is coming about, how it was newly introduced again from a vote that occurred in 2018, and how the county commission and the mayor tried to fight and tried to marginalize the responsibilities of the sheriff. And why? Because the way it's structured now, whoever is mayor controls the police. Right now it happens to be Danielle Levine Cava. Before her, it was someone else. After her, it would have been someone else. Okay. But the mayor is the de facto sheriff. So the mayor has the authority to say, go investigate there, go do this, more cops this way, stay away from here, and if you don't like it, you're fired.
And the sheriff?
Well, that's going to be the difference. That the way a sheriff structure works is a sheriff does not report to the commissioners and does not report to the mayor. The sheriff is the law enforcement representative of the public, of the county, right? And so I report to you. I don't report to a commissioner. I don't report to a mayor.
You report to a
community. They have no authority over me, right? They have no authority over me as a sheriff. And so that becomes really, really different. Really important. Now, the reason why I mention all of that background is because you'll start to realize that a lot of the county commissioners at first were trying to marginalize the sheriff's office and say, wait, we can't give up the police department, so let's give them just this aspect of the constitutional responsibilities of the sheriff, but we're going to maintain control over the Miami-Dade Police Department. And their words were actually on the podium. One of them actually said, we don't want to lose control over the police department, right? So what you can kind of start to realize is that she's trying to bankrupt the sheriff's office before it even starts. And there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of things in the undercurrent that are making or informing me to think that that's exactly what's happening. And one of the things, for example, look, we have corrections officers that are trying to do everything they're trying to do in the jail. They're short resources. They're short staffed. We only have one jail. There's only one place to drop off prisoners right now. When I was on, years ago, we had 3, 4, right? And yet they also minimized the budget, or they reduced the proposed budget for next year by $15 million for corrections, $70 million for us. And they're trying to take, and part of that has to do with the fact that they're taking communications bureau with them, all the dispatchers and everything else. So there's going to be a lot of.
If you become sheriff, would you have a say in where the money is going?
I will have all the say on where the money is going that is budgeted for the sheriff's office.
That's awesome. So what are your plans with that?
With the money?
Yeah.
Well, first, let's start by, we have to become what I continue to refer to as a principle-based police department.
Okay.
Right? I'll tell you a few little things that I think are sad, but when I was a major, it was a little unique because I was a major and provided police service to every single corner of Miami-Dade County from Monroe to Broward because of the units that I commanded. Okay. Now, what was unique also about that is that I had 3 captains reporting to me, where most bureaus have 1 captain reporting to them. Yet the interesting thing about this conversation is that I never had one single meeting with our director. Not a meeting, not a text message, not a phone call, not a voicemail, not a Zoom call.
Why is that?
Because there was no communication. And right now, the Miami-Dade Police Department is a soda can floating in the ocean. There's no vision. There's no forward momentum. There's no rudder. There's no leadership. There's absolutely, well, there's a lot of leadership.
A lot of chiefs, not enough Indians?
A lot of chiefs. But, look, I'll tell you this, and then we'll get back to your question.
Yes, of course.
When I first became a police officer, there was 1 director and 3 assistant directors.
Okay.
Right now, I almost wish I had a diagram. We have 1 director, we have a chief of public safety. We have a director. We have a deputy director. A couple of months ago, we had 6 assistant directors. Now they brought it down to 5. And we had an additional chief. Now, interestingly, we also have a representative from the mayor's office embedded into the police department, running every single decision that's going on in the police department. So, yes, we have a lot of leadership doing absolutely nothing, taking orders from a civilian that works directly for the mayor.
Right.
Why are we structured that way? So, when you get back to what are we going to do?
Yeah.
We have to become a principle-based police. We have to have a vision. And that vision is we're going to make public safety a priority in Miami-Dade County. The principles are going to be every single thing we do, every operation, every promotion, every initiative, every policy, everything that we do is going to be based on the 3 principles of, number 1, is it fair? Is what we're doing fair? And if we were videotaped, would it be considered fair? Would it be respectful? And is it going to continue to promote public trust? And a lot of people think that, well, that means he's going to be soft on crime. No, we're absolutely going to be super tough on crime. But we're going to do it under those 3 principles.
That's good. Yeah. It's scary to think that if the wrong person gets elected to sheriff, what they're going to do with this budget cut and how they're going to manage this money. Because I look at you and I'm like, well, he has done jiu-jitsu. He knows the importance of training. Look at all these teams that you have commanded for.
Right.
You would most likely, if I were a guest, not cut back training. Where some other candidates, I feel like they might be like, oh, we'll just take the hive away. What's the point of us, or we'll just take this away, because they haven't been in your feet per se, right?
Yeah. I think there's a few people in this race that are flat out dangerous. And there's a few people in this race that I think flat out are fakes.
Right.
That's why I think it's important to look at the chronology and how everything occurred. Because at the end of the day, when we talk about who's qualified, well, we can measure that qualification based on what their goals in the department is. There's a couple people, one of them that continues to say, I am the most qualified person. It's on the banners, it's on her signs, it's on the whole thing. That's great. You can argue that you are the most qualified.
Right.
To keep the department exactly the same as it is right now with no change, because that's what you're used to. That's what you've done. You've made no effort to advance the department. You've made no effort but now it's comical that you're repeating everything I say. You know what I mean? A home association unit. Oh, now you want to do it. Perfect.
And who's that?
It's a female candidate.
It's a female candidate. Okay.
Who's the most qualified?
I think your home association idea is amazing.
And have you heard them all repeat it? Yet they don't understand the problem.
I could actually understand because my association, I swear they're like doing something. My pool's been broken for like a year. Right. And we're like, where the hell is this money going to?
That I think, look, unfortunately, Miami-Dade is the incubator for all kinds of fraud.
Yeah. Oh man.
Everything starts
so
here.
Bad.
From insurance fraud,
yes,
to what is it? Car accident fraud, pharmaceutical, what is it? Income tax. The few years ago, it was bigger than drugs. Income tax fraud was bigger than drugs in Dade County. Most people don't know that.
I did not.
Yeah, and now it happens to be, and it's not that it's new, Because some people like try to hit me on it and say, well, it's been going on. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
What I'm saying is, right now it's probably the most abusive because it's affecting every single person in Dade County, and it's affecting realtors. It's affecting everyone. And it's forget about bullying. It's flat out criminal. And the problem is that there are rules against this occurring, but there are not laws.
Exactly.
You know, and that's what makes it such a challenge. And we I've committed to bringing in an entire section. Some of the candidates will say a task force. When they say that, that
you
means
said you're doing a fraud investigation section.
Right.
Is it? But you said for HOA, but are you doing other ones besides HOA?
Public corruption. Public corruption. Another one that they've repeated.
I was looking. I was like, it's gonna do something else, you know.
Yeah. So look, I'll tell you what it is. Fraud and corruption. They kind of go intermixed, right?
Yeah.
But the residents of Miami-Dade County, if you look around, I think we're all tired of seeing the same recycled politicians, the same names we've seen circulated. They go from one office to another. And by the way, there's a difference between an elected official and a recycled politician. An elected official is somebody who, in my opinion, is somebody who's going to grab an office, take a seat, and leave it much cleaner and better than he found it. That's a real elected official. A politician is the one that makes it all for themselves. They use a play on words. They find a way to, manipulate the system. They're going around and all they're looking is for another retirement, another paycheck, another funding source, another way to keep their hand in the cookie jar, right? Nice. And I think that we're tired of that. The residents are tired of that. And the residents deserve to know that there's going to be a vehicle, an independent vehicle, that's going to, I don't care if you're a police officer, a police chief, if you're a commissioner, if you're a politician, if you're a government employee. If there are allegations that you're corrupt, we're going to investigate. We're going to follow the money. We're going to look at the bank accounts, and the cards are going to fall where they fall.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
Yeah, and we're going to do that.
That's awesome. Sure. Are you planning on changing the training departments at all? Or upgrading them, helping them in any way?
Training is the absolute most important aspect of any police department.
Yes.
And I know that, and nobody can lie to me about that, and nobody can lecture me about that because I've been there as an officer, as a sergeant, as a lieutenant, as a captain, right? Mm-hmm. So I know what the necessity is. As a matter of fact, I was the subject matter expert for use of force. I am a consultant. I have a private company where I go. I train all over the world. When I left for the private sector, I was there for a year, and I ran a global training bureau with international contracted instructors. Yes. So I've been around training a little bit. I can't say I'm not an emotional person in terms of saying I'm going to change this, I'm going to change that.
Okay.
We have to revisit what's going on in training right now.
Yeah.
I know that there's a couple deficits where a lot of things have improved. For example, the Hive right now is probably at its highest point, and I love where it's going.
Yes.
And I wish I could have made up that name because it's such an awesome name, but I didn't.
You didn't make up the name.
But I didn't grow it to where it is now.
Yeah.
We basically, I'll tell you what my involvement was. I kind of approved it. Mm-hmm. Because conceptually they said, can we start what we started before? And I'm like, well, it kind of fell flat on its face.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I think we can do it. And my rule was, okay, we're going to do it. But once we commit to it, we better have an instructor there every single time. I don't want people that work midnights that are making an effort to go over there and receive training and have the door locked because we're busy doing something.
No.
And I said, so you guys have to police each other. And at the time, it was going to be either Sean or David running the class. That was it. That was the initiative. Mm-hmm. The other initiative the main initiative was it needs to be under somebody's martial arts flag. And I can tell, I don't know how deep you want to get into that, but I spoke to some of the city of Miami officers. They're now trying to replicate it because it cannot be associated with the Miami-Dade Police Department. Mm. It's a public service to the Miami-Dade Police Department within the walls of the Miami-Dade Police Department.
Yeah.
But it's a public service.
Yes, I think I have, I don't know his name, but he's Mojo.
Yes, he's the one I was talking to.
Yes, so he's supposed to fight for me on my next event.
Right.
And he's really trying to help with that, like do his own little thing over there at the city of Miami.
Yeah, I spoke to him a little bit. I met him at a promotion ceremony with Freddie, and I kind of gave him a few pointers of how we did.
Awesome.
Yeah,
that's great. I hope it works out for him because it's super important.
And he looks like a smart.
He loves jiu-jitsu, so I mean, you know. Yeah. On June 2020, moves were solidified where there's no longer going to be any chokeholds. Do you remember that? When they took out the chokeholds on June 2020?
I do.
Most people don't know, but police officers are not allowed to do rear naked chokes, triangles, or any type of choke to a subject. Which I think it's crazy. I think the jiu-jitsu community will think it's crazy because most of the people that train jiu-jitsu, a lot of people go to fire or they go to like police. I have a lot of friends who do jiu-jitsu who want to be police officers. And then you get there and you've been training and then they tell you, oh, but you can't choke him out. And you're like, when it's such a great technique.
It's funny you mentioned that.
Okay.
Because when that happened, it affected the hive.
I can imagine.
But it shouldn't. It was a major that was there that didn't understand the purpose of the hive because I had left.
So it affected it in what sense? They told them, hey, you guys are not allowed to choke?
So first, let's remember why that rule, where that came from. That came from after the George Floyd incident.
Correct.
The knee-jerk reaction that occurred all across America.
Yes.
With what I thought was one of the most irresponsible but smartest marketing strategies of defund the police. Okay. But one of the things that comes up is a chokehold, yet he was never choked. And it had nothing to do with it. As a matter of fact, if you look at, I think it was the Graham case in New York. Was it? It might not have been Graham. I forget his name. But there was a case where NYPD guys choke a guy, or they had some kind of headlock. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because they wanted to charge the officer for encircling the neck. And the guy ended up dying, but he died of other stuff. And I was like, but look, you're trying to charge the guy. Maybe if he would have been trained, because that department refuses to train people how to encircle the neck properly, and maybe if he understood how to apply a rear naked choke, or what we called. So I'm the one in Miami-Dade who I was a sergeant at the time. We used to have something called an LVNR, lateral vascular neck restraint. Mm-hmm. The problem is it was a trademarked and patented, technique that we ended up having to pay thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for every year to get recertified on this thing, which, by the way, I always felt that as it went in levels, it actually weakened the restraint or the choke or the whatever. We call it, informally, we call it a choke, but we're going to call it a strangulate, whatever you want. All of those sound violent.
They do.
Right?
It sounds a little crazy, strangling,
right.
It
sounds violent, but the truth is it's a neck restraint.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And, but we had the LVNR. So I said, why do we have to go and continue paying this private guy tens of thousands of dollars every year to recertify when this is a very obvious martial arts technique? We looked around the room. We had like over 100 years of martial arts training in there. Mm-hmm. And we're the Miami-Dade Police Department. Why are we paying, I don't know, for example, Zephyr Hills,
right, when
we have water in our backyard?
Correct.
And so we went through it. We went to the medical examiner's office and we changed the name. I had our medical examiner medically describe the technique, and that's what we called it. We called it the ACTR, the Applied Carotid Triangle Restraint. So I did all the data. I had a database, a use of force database that a lot of people consider to be the national standard, right, for databases. And then when this happens, apparently the president at the time, Trump, banned neck restraints. When he banned neck restraints, I don't know how that whole thing came about, but our director ended up also banning it. And I remember the conversation in the hallway. He walked up and said, "Hey man, just so you know, it was me." And I'm like, "Yeah, but why?" And he said,
"So you feel like he should have talked to you about it? Like it would have been nice."
Most definitely, being that we're the ones that did all the research.
That's what I would feel like. Yeah. Like I would be like, dude, like you didn't even say anything.
What happens in police departments, and what happens in the Miami-Dade Police Department, and what gives people the allowance to say I'm the most qualified person is, it's not what you know, it's the position you're in.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so people feel People feel entitled to being able to make a certain decision simply because of the position they hold at the time.
A lot of ego.
Yes. Being a subject matter expert on anything doesn't just mean, oh, you got promoted, you're now a sergeant. I cleaned out my chair, you cleaned out, you now sit in the chair and now you are it.
Right.
That's
so
it.
Did he have the choice to not enforce this? He just because Trump said it, he was like, all right, we're not going to do it. And he enforced the rule or the law. Is it a law?
What he told me was that he said, I did it. I thought it was wrong for him to do for several reasons.
Yeah.
And number two, he never consulted anybody, which is me. He never consulted me with what kind of data do we have? What kind of success rate have we seen? How many injuries have we seen when we've done it? Because we did look, there's a big fight, let's say, between doctors, medical doctors. And the fight is when you do a neck restraint, when you apply, let's just call it a rear naked choke.
Right.
Are you restricting blood flow to the brain or from the brain?
Sure.
You know what I mean? And some people will say, no, you get lightheaded because you're restricting blood flow to the brain. Remember, there's the jugular vein, and then there's the carotid artery. The jugular vein is a vein. It's outside, right? And it's what keeps the blood coming. Let me see if I remember. There's the artery, the way they explained it to me. And remember, these were two doctors sitting there, and I'm listening to them play tennis, and fight over this argument.
Right.
But the moral of the story is some people say that you're restricting blood flow to the brain, and that's why that goes out. But the other doctor says, no, the arteries are deeper inside. The blood is going down, but it's not leaving, and that's why you get red. So it's too much blood in the brain because all the blood is going up, but it's not allowed to come back down. Okay. You see what I mean?
Yes.
I'm not a doctor. Either way, I don't care which one of the two, but I happen to know it's very, very, very safe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there was a doctor.
I mean, we choke ourselves all day long.
All the time. All the time.
How many times? I mean, we literally rear naked choke ourselves all the time.
Right. Well, so the next argument that comes up is, when there's drugs on board, how does that affect it? And I understand that. But back then, the medical examiner's name was Bruce Heima. Bruce Heima talked about the only time he's ever seen a person die from a neck restraint was a person who was off his meds, went naked, broke into a house. A father with his kids upstairs came downstairs at like 3 a.m, sees the guy. They had a struggle. He got behind him and he choked him. This guy didn't train. This guy didn't do anything. He didn't know how to fight. He was just in such panic mode that he took the guy's back and he choked.
In his home
while his wife was calling the police. We're not talking about whether it justified. I mean, obviously it was justified.
Yeah.
But what ended up happening was he held that choke in for like 8 minutes. I mean, police arrived and that choke was still sunk in. So this guy actually suffocated.
Yeah.
Right? Which doesn't happen.
But going back to your point, if you're trained as a police officer, this would never happen.
It's the most humane way to put somebody out.
Correct.
It really is.
If you became sheriff, will you bring this back? Would you change this?
So two things. Number one, I'd have to see what the legal sufficiency is for bringing it back. Remember, I'm not an emotional. I don't make irrational decisions.
Right.
I'd have to see what the legal ramifications would be to bring it back.
Okay.
But if there's room for that, I will, absolutely, because it's the safest thing. Now, how did the hive get affected? Remember
that's right.
Remember I told you that the hive was supposed to be under a school's flag.
Correct.
Why? Because I didn't want anybody in that room to be subject to Miami-Dade Police Department rules, because then we wouldn't be able to, remember, under the LVNR, you had to do this. If you did this, it was wrong. Grip. If you did this, it was wrong. If you did even if you did this, while you have the guys, it was wrong. And the guy'd be in jail. The guy would be in trial and say, oh, wait, you use that hand? No, that's not my technique. I'm not defending you. Right? So I wanted to make sure that jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu. Let the cops figure out what applies to them.
Correct.
And that's another thing that I hate. I'm not a big fan of jiu-jitsu for cops.
Okay.
Right? When I would bring instructors over, right, we brought Hoyes in, We brought Dan Severn in one time. We brought Pedro would come in regularly. We brought all kinds of MMA guys in. And I never really liked when they would say, here's what I would do. You guys are cops, so do this. It's like, no. Show me what works in jiu-jitsu, and I will determine what makes sense for what we do, because you don't understand, a lot of what we do. You don't understand that there's a taser here, that there's a firearm here. And, I would rather, I've always been analytical in the sense that tell me what to do.
Yes.
Don't tell me how to do it.
Exactly. It's crazy because I've actually tried to look up these combative trainings. We see the videos online and we'll see a whole bunch of cops trying to bring somebody down. And then the jiu-jitsu community will be like, oh, why don't you just do this and just grab them? And you don't realize that the subject could grab the gun.
Right.
So there's certain moves that we do in jiu-jitsu that they cannot use, but that's just a whole nother story. Too.
No, that's a whole
other thing.
It goes when that van came, or when they were manned to do it.
Yeah.
Apparently the major that was there walked in and goes, "What are you doing? You can't teach anything on the neck." And I heard about it because they called me running, and they're like, "Hey man, this guy said this and this and this," and I'm like, "Well, did you guys? I'm not there anymore, so you can't be calling me." You know what I mean? I'm not there anymore, and that's a new boss, and I'm not going to get into his way. And if he wants to adjust it, that's his adjustment. But the whole purpose of that school was to be independent of the police. It's just
jiu-jitsu school.
It's a jiu-jitsu school that happens to be a public service to the Miami-Dade Police Department officers. They can go in there and train for free, and all we would do
just
is
like
provide.
The gym, basically.
Exactly.
Just like a track,
to go work out.
Go run.
Right.
Right. Okay, that's cool. So I interviewed 25 police officers from Miami-Dade, Miami Beach, Sweetwater, Highway Patrol, and the city of Miami. And I'm sure I'm missing some. So we have some positive feedback, and then we have some negative feedback and some questions. So I definitely wanted to, of course, because hello, definitely wanted to start with the negative. Okay, so our first question was, let's see. I feel that he's not for us, that he's only in it for himself. What would you say to that?
I don't even know where to start with that.
I know. It's a tough one.
I wouldn't know. If I was all for myself, I would have made a lot more money in this police department, since I had pretty much almost unlimited budgets everywhere I went.
Okay.
You will have seen that a lot of assignments that I had, I was not on those overtime rotations with them, because I felt like overtime and everything is theirs to do.
Yeah.
My job is to just be there. Not knowing where that's coming from, and not knowing the context, I would have to just
it's very vague. It's a huge umbrella,
right?
But I definitely
you got to remember that during an election, everybody has the candidate of preference,
of course,
right?
Yes.
And that's expected. Had there not been an election, and had there not been any of that, I wouldn't know that anybody would say that, because my first question would be, did you work for me?
Right. Do you know me?
Yeah.
Correct. Have you experienced something?
Right.
Exactly.
I'll give you an example. I'm going to give you an example.
Yes.
In leadership, if you are trying to be everybody's friend, you're not a leader.
Correct.
That's not the way it works. Right?
It happens to me in the promotion.
Yeah. So I'll give you an example. The place that I love the most in this department has been, two places, right? But has been SRT. Okay. Now, my mentality and my mindset when I was in SRT was much different after, while I was there, than after I learned a few things, after I left, after I got promoted, after I started sending people out in harm's way and getting people hurt and getting people injured, and seeing a guy that we showed up to the hospital expecting this guy to die, and he was under my command. Yeah. Right. And so when we were in SWAT, that we had bought new vests, and now they come out with these shoulder things, and I hated them.
It's so funny. That's actually my next question, and it was more of a joke. They're like, ask him if he's going to bring back the shoulder pads.
Well, that's why I bring it up. I bring it up because this is just an example of people's perspective are based basically on just their perspective and at that time what you might have said. You know what I mean?
Right.
But there's 27 years of this, you know, and so what ended up happening was we hated it. I hated it, but they told us you better have it on. But SRT back then had a lot more. It was a lot more rigid. It was a lot more.
What year was that?
I think I got there in '99.
Man, this was such a long time ago.
Right, which is why I say, there's a lot of years.
Yeah, like we're right
to hear someone now.
Of course, but I definitely wanted to tell you for you could.
No, I get it.
Because I tell people all the time, everybody who I spoke to, they're like, "Oh, but you know, it doesn't matter what I say." Everybody told me the same thing, and I go, "Hey, your feelings are valid, dude."
Yeah.
I'm like, I care of what you say,
right?
You know me.
Yeah. I'll tell you the reason why I mentioned the shoulder pad thing was because I hated it, but they forced us to wear it, and I didn't understand it at the time.
So it wasn't even your call.
No. Wait. then I leave.
Okay.
SRT changed. The culture changed. Okay. Everything changed. The supervision changed. Well, so I leave and I'm doing my thing. But now by this time I'd been in narcotics and I've seen people get into shootings right then and there. And I'm like, man, how can we adjust this? Then I'm the subject matter expert. I'm looking at things from a different perspective. Now I'm testifying on different cases. I'm giving professional opinions. I'm traveling all over the world, right? Talking to different chiefs, talking to different trainers. Now I come back and I'm the major of Special Patrol. And I see these guys walking around and I look and they're coming out of a warrant and I see no protection. Mm-hmm. And all I'm thinking about is the guy that we sent to the road one day. And I had to sit for like 3 weeks every day, Saturdays and Sundays at Jackson Trauma, right? Because he every day he was going to die. Every day he's not going to make it today and he's going to get out of it. He's not going to make it today. And I'm the one that had to sit there with his family. You know what I mean?
That's tough.
So I am not going to allow, and I don't care what these young kids think.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That's why there's experience, you know?
Of course.
I don't care how uncomfortable they are. I'm not going to be the one talking to your wife when I say he got shot through the arm. Oh, because you got shot in the arm. I don't care about my arm. Yeah, but if the bullet comes this way, it goes through, hits the aorta or whatever it is, and now I got to sit there and look at your wife and say, hey, yeah, we had the equipment, but I didn't force him to wear it because it was uncomfortable for him. Does that make sense? Right. So the argument that some people didn't like was when I said, wait a minute, hold on. During SWAT school, you grab these guys, you throw them in mud. You know, they're standing up, they're in sand pits.
The schools are crazy.
Yeah, and then they got to run. And your whole rationale is, I want to make them feel uncomfortable. But now here you are in SWAT, and it's too uncomfortable to wear something that's going to protect.
Valid.
You see what I mean?
Point.
So perspective is everything.
And it's actually, protecting you. So it's like, wear the shoulder pads. So would you bring them back?
The shoulder pads?
Yeah.
Look, I think as a sheriff, that's not what I would be focused on.
Right.
That's the truth.
Yeah. There's bigger stuff.
I believe that every level has its responsibility. I just have to put people in the level that I think, that I think are gonna do what they think is the right thing.
And I'm glad you said that, because somebody else was saying the other comment that we had concern was, I'm concerned that he would micromanage.
Right.
But to that answer, there you go. He wouldn't even touch them, so you might not wear shoulder pads. Right. That's up to somebody else. That's what he's saying.
I think, where did I micromanage? And I'm not going to say micromanage. It's just that, look, cops hate change.
Yeah.
They hate change. They don't like it, but they can't stand the status quo.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if you're teaching, and I at the end of the day have to be the one to answer for everything you say in your class, then I'm going to sit in the class and I'm going to do what we used to call QCs, quality checks or quality controls. Because at the end of the day, you are an extension, you are a representative of the voice of the department, and I need to make sure, and those are the experiences that no other candidate in this race has, that when I write something that is in the most litigious area in law enforcement, and I have to defend every position, and if I tell an officer he can do that, then I need to stand there in front of that was my phone.
Oh, okay.
That I need to stand there on a trial and put my hand up and say, I wrote that because of this, and defend those positions. Does that make sense? Right. So everything is based on perspective. And this idea, so I kind of went off, but I say that because there are certain responsibilities that, yes, I'm going to make sure that you're doing it the way it needs to be done. But once Once I leave that area, you're doing your own thing. I don't care what you do.
Yeah.
Now I'm focused on this.
I'm bigger stuff.
You know what I mean?
Bigger fish.
Yeah.
Yeah,
My role as a sheriff is to make sure that they're the best equipped, that they're the best trained, and they're the most supported. You know, that they know that we're going to have their back, that we know there's an 18% increase in officer resignations and early retirements, and that's because cops no longer feel supported. They're scared of doing their jobs, and we got to make sure that they're no longer scared to do their job. That's what my focus is.
It's great.
Other commanders and everybody in the middle have to mind those things.
Okay. The next negative comment was, there's so many promises, and this actually wasn't just towards you, it was towards everybody.
Right.
Was like any politics, there's so many promises, and when it gets down to it and they get in there, they never do anything.
Right. I haven't promised anything.
I
I haven't promised anything. But I understand that. I understand that frustration. But then again, that's where I go back to. Remember, we talked about the characteristics, the timeline, the chronology of this whole thing. That'll inform people's integrity and people's attributes, right? Because what I can tell you is the best indicator of future performance is past performance. There's a lot of people that are sitting in here talking about that they're leaders, that they've done this, that they've done that, yet they haven't handled a major initiative in this department in 25 years. There's some people that are pretty high up there that I haven't heard a decision that they've ever made in their entire career. Yet I've been making those really, really difficult decisions ever since I was in the rank of sergeant. You know,
years.
For years.
For years.
So.
So we did ask everybody who they were going to vote for. And you were definitely in the top 3. It was you, it was Rosie, and it was Reyes. Right. So I asked why Rosie. Their feedback said, well, Trump endorsed her or sponsored her.
Right.
That was the only thing they said. And maybe one person said because she's a girl, which for me, it doesn't matter, gender.
Right.
The next person for Reyes literally was nothing about Reyes, but only about Bello. So I guess you guys have a right-hand man, and Bello is that to Reyes. I was trying to figure that out.
Right.
So those were the 3. It was you 3. What do you think about that?
So I'll say that number one, it's a little based on what so let's start. I'm not a politician. It's the first time I run for office, but I've learned a lot during this entire process.
Yes.
I think it's naive. It's naive to think that there are not other candidates there that are going to be a threat because they're politicians. They know nothing about police work, but they're politicians. So let's go one by one.
We'll start with Rosie.
The reason why we're talking about Rosie is because she has a Trump endorsement. The reason why she has a Trump endorsement is, remember I said all you got to do is follow the money?
Yeah.
So first let's start with, because this is public and everyone knows, Rosie was going to change parties to go with Danielle Levine Cava. Rosie is running her campaign, or let's remember what Freddie was running his campaign on. Vote for me and nothing will change. The community knows me. I know this community. Nothing will change. Freddie had his unfortunate incident. Then Rosie says, I'm Team Freddie. I'm going to finish what Freddie started.
Okay.
Well, Freddie was starting was vote for me and nothing will change.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, she tries to get the Cava endorsement. That's all looking really good up until she can't change parties because the deadline had come. Now she can no longer change parties. Now, Cava says, I'm never, because at least, I'll say this, at least Cava had her principles in order and said, I'm never going to support a Republican, right? Here we're talking about people that were willing to change, and we're talking about one that already changed. So now we're talking about integrity. Now we're talking about personal attributes. The reason why I jumped in the race was because Freddie changed. Had Freddie not changed, I would have been holding up signs for Freddie.
Mm.
Okay?
Yeah.
And why? Because this is the middle, this is the right, and this is the left. Freddie is not here. That moved 7 spots to become a Democrat. Freddie was here.
Yeah. And
moved 95 spots. I'm exaggerating, right?
Yeah.
All statistics are made up on the spot.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So Freddie changed who he is, and forget about, I love Freddie to death. Freddie is one of the most genuine people I've ever met. I love the guy. He's got no malice. Mm-hmm. That's not the point. Yeah. The point is, the reason why we're going back to a sheriff's office is to be independent of all political influence, to be an independent office, to be independent and just worry about public safety, and the safety of your officers and the training and everything else. Okay. Well, if that stays true, this person was willing to change parties. That door closed on her. Now, all of a sudden, she's going to be the most Republican ever because her consultant is Carlos Jimenez's son and daughter-in-law. Now, he's a lobbyist, right? And she's a Democrat, right? Now, the interesting thing here is, as a matter of fact, I got sent something today, some other hit piece.
Okay.
And I got sent it today. Rosie has donated to Charlie Crist, who's a Democrat, above Rick Scott.
Okay.
But she's taking pictures with Rick Scott because I'm a Republican.
Yeah.
She donated to Freddie Ramirez, who was a Democrat. Whether we like it, cut it, no matter how you cut it, slice it, or dice it, he was a Democrat. That's 2 Democrats that she's donated money to. My understanding is she did not even show up to vote for DeSantis when he was running for governor. Okay. And she did not even show up to vote for Donald Trump during this primary. Now, I don't care about politics. That's not the point.
Right.
But that does start to inform you that I have a hard time when now you're going to stand here on a podium because your consultants told you to act mean and be stern because now you're Donald Trump's endorsed candidate. So stand there and talk about the importance of having a Republican candidate, having a Republican in office with conservative values.
Do you think that Reyes did the same thing? Because I was told that he was Republican and then he switched to Democrat.
I don't know. The truth is, I don't know Reyes like that.
Right.
It doesn't bother me. I'm not running against him yet. He's not my opponent yet. He'll be my opponent August 21st. So I'm not even looked at. I don't care about Reyes.
Okay.
As far as we'll get to Reyes.
Okay.
But that's the thing with Rosie. So Rosie, as far as I'm concerned, has no credibility anymore. When she did one, she did the other, and now she's acting like she's someone else. I've known her for 25 years. I think her consultants, when they made her have an identity transplant, they should have picked an identity that's a little closer to what she really is and not so far off, right? And meanwhile, there's nobody in this race that can say that I've changed anything. From the time I was an officer to sergeant to lieutenant to captain to major to today that I'm running. You know what I mean? Yeah. My values stay the same. My integrity is untouched. They can like they did a hit piece on me, which I thought was the most ridiculous thing ever. But nobody can argue with my experience. Nobody can argue with my contribution to the department. Nobody can argue with my work, my career path, and nobody can argue with my integrity.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's
Rosie.
1.
Okay. 2.
Who was 2?
Reyes.
Oh, because those were the 3.
Those were the 3.
Look, I met with Reyes. We had a cigar. He's not my opponent yet, so I won't get into a lot of things until he's the opponent. Okay. But I can tell you that.
Why is he not the opponent? Because it's 15 candidates, right?
Because we're running a primary right now.
Okay, so after the 21st, that's when it gets
after the 21st, there will be 1 Republican and 1 Democrat. Right now, I'm competing with the Republicans.
Got it. So which is Rosie.
Got it. Now, here's what's ironic. Of all these people, you have characters in this race.
Okay.
That are putting on their flyers pictures of Donald Trump, right? And themselves, and then saying, "Thank you, Donald Trump." So this is a reverse. This is the only election I've ever seen that not only are the candidates saying, like in other elections, this politician is supporting me. These candidates are saying, I'm supporting this politician. And that's how they're trying to attach themselves. And why? Because what is Rosie doing? It's a Republican primary. So she's got to act more Republican than anyone else to be able to win among the Republicans. The other guy, we have a trooper there that's putting a picture of him and DeSantis, of Trump and DeSantis, and him in the middle like this. This is a guy who's never been a cop in his entire life, has never supervised a chicken wing. But he's doing that, and it's a manipulation. You have another guy, a former lieutenant, putting a picture of Donald Trump. And here's the crazy part. I'm the only one in this race that's actually a member of the Republican Executive Committee of Miami-Dade County. I'm a committee man for the Republican Party. You haven't seen me put that on mailers. You haven't seen me put that. I don't put that online. And why do I not put that online? Because it goes against my values when I know that the reason why we're going to a sheriff's office is to be independent of political influence.
Right.
You see what I mean? So I think there's a lot of, there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of, hey, look at me. The only reason why anybody's talking about Rosie is because you got a Trump endorsement. And she's relying on that. And we're going to see
my point exactly. So going into the positive feedback, speaking of Reyes, somebody said, I wish he's like, why didn't Knapp pair up with Bello? Right. Why is it that Reyes paired up with Bello since they're both were SRTs?
Right. Well, I don't think the question is who did Knapp pair up with. The question is, why did Bello pair up with Reyes?
I don't know.
You know what I mean?
I don't know Bello, by the way, but I've heard wonderful things about him.
Bello and I go back a long way. Bello and I go back a long way. And that's as far as we're going to go.
Okay.
I'll tell you this. Because anything I say can be repeated.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I believe in that. But it's interesting that there were certain things in Bello's career that I helped him with. There are certain positions that Bello got that I assisted him with. Yet the day that I announced, I was no longer a friend. And then we ran into each other a couple times. And it's like, hey, this is weird, And then, oh, no, whatever. But I understood that. So here's the comical thing. Because I have, I feel like I have integrity and I don't like to put people in bad positions. The one thing that I knew I was not going to do, and you can ask any cop that you speak to, is I never called any Miami-Dade Police Department officer and said, hey, will you support me? And the reason why I didn't do that is because I love Freddie Ramirez to death, right? Freddie Ramirez is a friend of mine. I ran against Freddie, and I did not want to put any of my friends in a position where they're going to have to go against and backstab their boss. Yeah. Even for a personal friend.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Now, so there are a lot of people that I just didn't call. I didn't say, I don't have to ask permission to run for office.
Right.
Right. So anyhow, then later on what happens is Freddie gets out. Now I start getting phone calls like we're friends again. Then Reyes jumps in. Then I get no other phone calls. Then I get the HPOA endorsement, and then I get a check to my campaign. You know what I mean? It's just, and I'm sitting there looking around like, I'm
what a shame, though.
50 years old.
You guys would have been perfect, and it would have been Batman and Robin from SRT.
Look, I don't think the
Everything
SRT
happens
thing,
for a reason, though.
Yeah, I think the SRT thing is it's a cool fraternity to be a part of, but it's not necessary to be a sheriff. It's a good perspective to have because there's no unit in this department that can lie to me about anything. You know what I mean? So if we're on a call out, look, when I was a major, and you can ask some of the commanders there, when I was a major in SRT, I'd go to the calls, but I let the commander do what he was doing. I sat back, I asked questions. If I thought they were going the wrong way, I would be like, hey, have we considered doing this? Yeah, I think we should probably consider, you know what I mean? And that only happened once, right? So you let people do what they're doing, but and it's good, I think, for the sheriff to have his feet wet in every single aspect of the department, but I don't think it's necessary. I just think my view is I need to surround myself around people that are smarter than me. Yeah. That's the rationale, and that's the goal of being a good leader, is getting people that are not afraid of telling you when you're wrong. Yeah. Interestingly, when I started I wrote all the active shooter policies for Miami-Dade County.
Yes, I read that.
Yeah. And what I did was I brought in some of the most argumentative people that I know. Some people, by the way, a lot of people, all the people that are teaching, the whole stuff now, they obviously they can. But when I put this together, it wasn't because of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. It was actually before Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. And that happened on February 14th on Valentine's Day. But I mentioned that because all these people that are in charge of the program now are because I invited them into the room. I said, this guy knows nothing about tactics, but he's pretty good at command and control. And I knew that 70% of an active shooter scenario is incident management. It's not tactics. And what I had to drill out of people's brain, including our director, is that an active shooter call is not for a SWAT team. They're going to be the last ones to get there. You know what I mean? And that's how the whole, that's how we came up with our policy. But I brought in Bello. I brought in some other guys, to do that. So anyway.
So going into the positive feedbacks, and this will be like the end of the podcast, but they said every time I have seen him, he's been super humble and nice. He'll stop and he'll talk to me and he'll say hi, and he's an honorable person. Another person said, I love the fact that he's been in every department and the experience that he has, which is why he has my vote.
Right.
So these are all great things that people have said about you. With that being said, I think you've done an amazing job. I think you will be an amazing sheriff. So I hope everything goes well with you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming and doing this podcast.
No, I would just say what I tell everyone. Be skeptical. I'm not a politician, but treat me like one, which means don't believe a word I'm saying. Do your fact check, but fact check every single other person, because there's a lot of noise in the race. They're going to try to, every single one of us is going to tell you about the attributes that are in the light most favorable to us. So I'm going to tell you, you need a sheriff that has this. The other guy's going to tell you, you need a sheriff that has that. But the main thing that you can't take away is integrity and the attributes of being able to run a police department the right way. And there's a lot of people that are what I call cubic zirconias. They look good, but they're not the real thing. My name's Mario Knapp, and I'm number 56 on the ballot.